welcome to my series about, yes, all Chopin's music. Was this Chopin? No, it wasn't. But still, I'm recording this video for you, and I put it into the series of all Chopin's music. Why? Because Chopin wrote a piece that is based on this famous popular Italian melody from Napoli. The melody, which has the title O Mamma Mamma Cara, so my dear mom, a very popular, very old Napolitan song, which is also very famous in many countries, because there are words for based on this melody for children. My hat, it has 3 corners. Probably many of you know it in your own original language. We also have it in Polish, and there is in German, and in every language probably is something similar to that, because it's extremely popular. But why Chopin decided to write variations on this melody? This is a very interesting story. This melody was not that popular until a famous Italian violinist, Niccolò Paganini, composed his own variations on this theme and called them the Carnival in Venice. I think he wrote 20 or more than 20 variations on this theme, and they were spectacular. They were so virtuoso and incredibly difficult, and when he played it to the public all over Europe, everybody thought it's impossible to play, and yet he played it. So there were many legends, about Niccolò Paganini. I'm sure you know this artist, so I don't have to talk about him, and about these legends, about the devil and stuff like this. But still, why Chopin decided to use this theme also? It was in 1829 when Niccolò Paganini arrived to Poland, and he played concerts in Poznań and in Warsaw, and he spent 3 months in Poland. He was invited by a Russian Tsar, Nicholas I, on the occasion of coronation hymn for the King of Poland. Yes, that was the times when Russian Tsar was a king of our country, which now we are independent, but that time we weren't. But Niccolò Paganini was invited, and he came, and he played 12 concerts in Warsaw. Chopin attended all of them, and of course he was so inspired. He also couldn't believe that this was true. And one day, after one of the concerts, he sketched this theme, and he sketched also a few variations on this theme. But now, during this analysis that we are going to make today, I would like you to note and to think about whether Chopin tried to copy Paganini or not. And with this question I will start the analysis. And what first we have to do is we have to count how many variations we have in this piece. So to do it, we have to also analyze the theme so that we know exactly when it ends. And the theme is very, very simple. It consists of only 2 phrases, and each phrase is repeated twice. Phrase number 1. Repeated. Phrase number 2. Repeated. And this is the end, right? And now we have variation number 1. Did you hear all the phrases? Phrase number 1 repeated, phrase number 2 repeated. I hope you have, because it was not that hard, I think, to catch, because this first variation is still very similar to the theme. But now let's try to make a short analysis of this variation. First of all, it's not easy to play. It's already, we need to have quite a good double thirds technique to play it, and also very light hand and very fast hand. Not only fast fingers, but fast hand. Double thirds means that we play 2 notes together with one hand. And this is not easy for piano, but it's even more difficult on a violin. And this variation it's very clear for me, and I think for all of us when we listen to this variation, that Chopin was inspired by violin and by a violinist and by Niccolò Paganini. Because this sounds almost as if the violin is playing this melody. Just listen the right hand alone. And imagine violin. And these thirds are not comfortable to play on piano, but I'm sure, I know it, that for violin it's even more difficult than for piano. Because the thirds on violin are really a problem. So this was phrase number 1. And phrase number 2. Phrase number 2 is very different in this variation than the original. Because in the original we had going down. In the variation we go up. And then we go down. And after that we have again the scale of the thirds. And this is also repeated. And this is the end of variation number 1. So, what about the left hand? And this is a very interesting topic. The left hand in these variations is not changing at all. Well, only the last variation has a little change in the way how we play chords, but the chords stay the same. And now another question. How many different chords this melody is using? chords are, you know, a few notes that are played together and are bases of the melody. So just listen. This is the first chord, and we have chord number 1. Then chord number 2. Repeated, chord number 2. And chord number 1. And then it is repeated, and the second phrase, chord number 1, chord number 2, repeated, and chord number 1. Only 2 chords in this melody. Incredible. And Chopin decided that the left hand will be all the time the same throughout the whole piece. Later, almost 20 years later, he repeated this technique in his famous Berceuse lullaby, when we have also 2 chords and left hand is the same throughout the whole piece. So maybe these variants, these variations, the piece that we are analyzing today, maybe they were an inspiration for Chopin to compose the Berceuse. Who knows? So the left hand is not changing at all, and the right hand is imitating the violin. That's how we can call it. Okay, let's proceed to variation number 2. Variation number 2 starts with a motif that is very violin-like. Because, you know, when the violinist is playing this, he or she, you know, use the bow and the very fast movement of the bow, and the bow is touching all the 4 strings. I mean, it doesn't have to touch all the 4 strings, but that's how it sounds actually. So this is what Chopin is imitating here. Then the answer has 2 different ways of playing. First is legato, and then staccato, or spiccato in violin. And then it is repeated like the theme. And here we don't have it anymore. We have the scale going from heaven down. This is very unpredictable and very irregular way of writing variation, but a very interesting one. Let's listen again to this first phrase. All the time we have something unpredictable. And now phrase number 2. So phrase number 2 has also a lot of beauty. It starts again with this violin-like motif, very high jump, just for the reminder. And here so this is very similar to the original, in fact, because this and this is repeated. final moment, the ending of variation number 2, has the scale, the chromatic scale played in not in thirds but in sixths. So it's even more difficult, both for violin player and for the pianist as well. The sixth, because it's wider for the hand, so it's very uncomfortable written. And even if it sounds and looks so easy, it is not, believe me. Okay, and now we have variation number 3, and this variation is special. Let's listen and try to count these phrases. We had phrase number 1 repeated, phrase number 2 repeated. It's not that difficult, but you will see something special. Okay, let's count. Yes, and that's the end. I know, now you ask me, where is repeated phrase number 2? Where is it? Is it somewhere? No. Chopin doesn't repeat phrase number 2 for the second time. Only in this very variation. Why? We don't know. Did he forget? We don't know. I don't think so. Maybe he wanted again to be unpredictable and to write some irregular music. Now, analyzing this variation is fun because this variation is a very, very interesting dialogue. Dialogue of the main melody with this very cute scale going down, but this scale is written in a very interesting way. It's not only thirds like we had before, but it's like this. We have the third and then one note, the third and one note, the third and one note, the third and one note all the time. Third one note, 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 third one note all the time. Why is it so important? Because for the second time when this phrase is repeated, Chopin writes something like this. And what is this? It's exactly the same passage than here, but this third is splitted on two notes, so it's just splitted. Instead, like this, third and one, we have so a very interesting way of composing and making it even more interesting. All the time variations, just listen. And again. And now phrase number 2, which starts with a very bravura, very brave, well, very virtuoso-like scale. And then it's just finished. And it's not repeated. And we have the last variation in this piece, variation number 4. Variation number 4, which is also very simple. Let's listen to the theme. And now a little bit variation. So a very simple way of making variation, just writing faster notes on the basis of the melody that was in the theme, original theme. And then the second, and here. So very simple. And repeat it. And the end is again different. We have jumps. Very wide jumps, very high. Does it remind you something? Liszt Campanella, but of course Chopin didn't know this piece because this piece was not written yet. Chopin just used this special kind of technique that he probably heard in Paganini's playing, when Paganini was jumping his hand, you know, so this is variation, the first phrase. Listen again, the first phrase. And now the second phrase. It. And now we only had the short coda. Short coda, which also has something very interesting. It starts with the chromatic scale going down, and then this chromatic scale is repeated, but just listen, in a very funny way. Chopin puts between every two notes, he puts the third note, but in between, and this third note is first for 3 times played with the thumb, and then another 3 times is played with the 5th finger. So again, it's not that easy to play because the pianist has to change the thinking. First has to think about playing it with the thumb and then with the 5th. And at the same time we must play this. So what I want to say is that this piece is not easy to play, but it's not so spectacular and maybe rewarding for the pianist because it doesn't make the audience scream, and everything ends like the lullaby, we can say. And now the answer to my question that I asked at the beginning. Chopin doesn't want to copy Paganini. On the contrary, he writes the opposite piece of music. He takes the Napolitan theme and then he writes variation in his style. Delicate, elegant, difficult, very difficult, because you need to have very good technique to play them well. Charming, funny, light, but he never bangs the piano like Liszt. He doesn't write any passages that sound difficult but are not that difficult to play, like this kind of banging. He could, but he didn't want to. So sometimes I wonder what was he thinking while attending Paganini concerts, because Liszt, we know what he was thinking. He decided, I want to be like him. Chopin definitely didn't think like this, but he was still inspired. Chopin never wanted to play concerts in huge halls for crowds like Paganini or like Liszt. So, but still we have this piece which is a witness of Chopin's attending Paganini's concerts. And well, I like to play it because first of all, this melody is very, very famous, and also it shows us the Chopin from some kind of different perspective. Even though Chopin never published this piece, and he didn't even give it the title. The title that we know, Souvenir de Paganini, is not original. What Chopin wrote at the beginning of the sketch was simply variations, but he wrote it in Polish. And that's how this piece is titled in my edition as well. But I think it's charming. I compare this piece sometimes to a jewelry, but like a very, very small but shining and delicate jewelry. And that's all for today, and this analysis is over. So maybe let's have some fun and let's listen to this in its entirety one more time. Thank you very much, and see you again. Bye bye.